Right now, on a highway service plaza in southern China, a car is charging at a rate more than 4 times faster than anything you can plug into in the United States. 5 minutes and the driver leaves. The whole world argues about which country builds the better electric car, and almost nobody checks where you plug it in. That is where the race actually got decided, and the thing that decided it is a gray cabinet standing behind the stall. China finished May 2026 with 22.5 million charging connectors of every kind in the ground, up 44.9% in a single year. The United States has 250,406 public charging ports across 80,543 locations. Those two figures are not measuring quite the same thing, and I will come back to that. The gap survives the correction. So let us separate the real engineering from the press release, because both are in this story. The piece that actually explains China's lead is a trick almost nobody has written about. The wall everybody hit. To see why that trick matters, you have to know what a fast charging site actually costs to build. It is almost never the charger. Electrify. America's fastest stalls deliver up to 350 kilowatts. Tesla's newest V4 superchargers run at about 325. But every one of those stalls sits on land somebody bought or leased and needs its own grid connection, sized for the worst moment when every stall's busy at once. Utilities treat that request the way a city treats a request for a new water main. It takes years. Tesla has been building superchargers for more than a decade. By April 2026, it had 80,018 stalls across 8,502 sites worldwide, genuinely the best charging network outside China. Iona, a company 8 automakers founded together to fix American charging, had 1,020 stalls across 107 stations. Land and grid connections are why that number is 1,020 and not 100,000. The trick nobody talks about. BYD said it would have 20,000 flash charging stations running across China by the end of 2026. By the 27th of May, it had passed 6,100. But the split is the interesting part. Only 2,000 of those are standalone highway stations BYD builds itself. The other 18,000 go inside charging sites that already exist, owned and run by other Chinese charging companies. BYD calls them stations within stations. Picture a coffee kiosk opening inside a supermarket that already has the power, the parking, and the customers. The kiosk just rents a corner. 3 costs fall away when you do it that way. First, the land. Somebody already bought it, paved it, and got it approved. Second, the grid connection. Already there, already sized, already energized. Third, and this is the clever one, the peak. A charger pulling 1,500 kilowatts does not need a grid connection sized for it if you park a battery beside it. The battery fills slowly all day off the existing supply, the way a water tower does, then empties fast when a car pulls in. BYD's own description of those sites says it plainly. No new land and no increase in grid capacity. Then in June 2026, BYD signed a cooperation agreement with Sinopec, which already runs more than 30,000 service stations and over 14,000 charging and battery swap sites. Tesla needed a decade to reach 8,502 sites. BYD is renting 18,000. One more piece has to work for any of it to matter. Pushing that much power into a battery is nothing like filling a tank. The battery and the charger have to negotiate continuously over how much current the cells can take at this temperature and this state of charge. It is 2 computers agreeing how fast they can safely talk to each other. The numbers, honestly. And let me be straight with you, because this is where the internet starts rounding in its own favor. That 22.5 million figure is real, and it is not all public chargers. 17.5 million of them are private, mostly wall boxes in people's own parking spaces. The public count is 4.95 million. Private connectors outnumber public ones 3.4 times and grow at roughly twice the rate. So the honest number is 4.95 million. It still holds up. The International Energy Agency put China at more than 65% of every public charging point on the planet at the end of 2025, which does exceed all other regions added together. The United States sat at around 235,000 public points, about 3% of the world total, while owning about 10% of the world's electric cars. One more correction. The average public connector in China is rated at about 49 kilowatts, against the megawatt figure in the press release. Peak power and average power are as different as a car's top speed and your commute. 5 minutes. That average is the boring truth. The top end of this network does something it hides completely. BYD's Blade. Battery 2.0, announced in March 2026, takes a compatible car from 10% to 70% in 5 minutes, from 10% to 97% in 9 minutes. At minus 30 degrees Celsius, the whole thing takes 12 minutes. The charger doing it peaks at 1,500 kilowatts, more than 4 times Electrify America's Best. 5 minutes is shorter than the queue inside a petrol station on a Friday, and BYD is not alone, which is what makes this a race rather than a stunt. In April 2026, CATL, the largest battery maker on Earth, unveiled its third-generation Shanxing cell, 10% to 98% in 6 minutes and 27 seconds, on lithium iron phosphate chemistry, with internal resistance CATL says is half the industry average. Geely's network, which includes Zeekr, runs 2,103 stations with a verified single-gun peak of 1,500 kilowatts on the 2026 Zeekr 001, up from the 1,200 kilowatt liquid-cooled gun Zeekr showed in 2025. Who pays for it? None of that matters if the build-out cannot pay for itself, and this is the wall American charging is still standing at. A megawatt-class charger is an expensive object. That charger, plus land, plus a dedicated grid connection is a different order of expensive, and that is the bill the stations within stations model refuses to pay. Look at what the partner operators get, because they are not doing BYD a favor. An operator with a half-empty site gets BYD's hardware, BYD's drivers, and BYD's traffic pulled onto ground it already owns. Sinopec's 30,000 forecourts are already built, already staffed, already sitting on roads people drive. Turning one into a megawatt charging site is a hardware install rather than a construction project. The pace shows up in the totals. Between January and May 2026, China added 2.4 million connectors, roughly 480,000 a month. In the United States, the second quarter of 2026 added 4,382 public fast charging ports, down 10% from the same quarter a year earlier. And in the first quarter, 227,747 new electric vehicles arrived against 9,212 new public chargers, about 25 new cars per new plug. When the plug leaves China, all of which stays an interesting Chinese story until the hardware gets on a boat. BYD's first commercial flash charging station in Europe went live in May 2026. In June, it opened its first megawatt-class site there. The stated target is 3,000 flash charging sites across Europe by the end of 2026 and 6,000 outside China altogether, including around 300 in the United Kingdom by the end of 2027. And they are open to any brand, not only BYD drivers. Hold that against the European baseline. The Netherlands leads the continent at 210,000 public points, Germany 196,000, France 185,000, and the overwhelming majority are slow or medium speed. In North America, Iona has 1,020 stalls and a stated goal of 30,000 by 2030. This is the part that decides whether a Chinese car is worth buying where you live. A battery that accepts a megawatt is a spec sheet until something in your country can deliver one. The company selling you the car is installing the plug. Which raises the obvious question, does any of this survive contact with reality? The honest reckoning. 4 problems, and not one of them is solved. First, the grid. This is the big one. Megawatt charging is a grid problem before it is a plug problem, and BYD's buffer batteries are the proof of that rather than the answer to it. You only engineer around a constraint that is genuinely there. Scale it to thousands of sites, all pulling hard at 6 in the evening, and those batteries become the main cost. Second, peak against average. Every charge rate figure here is a peak held for seconds under ideal conditions. 10% to 70% in 5 minutes is a real measurement and a best case on a warm battery in a specific car. Third, the car has to be able to take it. Only about 2.2 million of China's public points were fast or ultra fast at the end of 2025, and megawatt charging needs a battery engineered for it. Most cars on the road, China included, cannot accept anything close. And fourth, the one nobody puts on a thumbnail. Utilization. Data released by China's National Energy Administration in April 2026 put the overall utilization rate of the country's public charging piles below 10%. In first-tier cities, it has dropped under 2%. A single pile needs an average daily utilization above 8.5% just to break even. That is a car park with 100 spaces and 8 cars in it, and somebody is paying for all 100. So step back and look at the whole thing. 22.5 million connectors, 4.95 million of them public, more than 65% of the world's public charging in one country. A charger that fills a battery in 5 minutes, and a fleet averaging 49 kilowatts. 18,000 sites built by renting somebody else's land and grid connection, and a network largely idle, waiting for the cars to catch up. The chargers went in first. That is the whole answer to the argument everybody was having about the cars. Making these takes a while, so if you got something out of it, hit subscribe. There is a lot more coming.